Welcome to Sisters in Sobriety. Today's guest is Dr. Blair Steel, a clinical psychologist who specializes in helping high functioning women understand and break patterns. Her work focuses on helping people uncover the deeper drivers behind self sabotage, relationship struggles, and emotional dysregulation, and replacing those patterns with strategies rooted in neuroscience and real world psychology. Welcome, Dr. Blair.
Thanks so much for having me.
So, for listeners meeting you for the first time, who are you and what led you to become a clinical psychologist?
Yeah, I'm Dr. Blair Steel. I'm a psychologist in California. I did my first internship in a treatment center, and that's really how I fell into it. And, at the time, that's just what it seemed like. Oh, this is conveniently located. I'm getting training. But now, nearly 20 years later, there's a lot more that drew me to this than I realized at the time in my early 20s. Now I'm almost 41 and I see addiction all around me. I see it in my family. It's not as much of a coincidence as I really thought. Uh, and it brings me a lot of purpose to work in this field. I feel like I kind of get it. Um, and it brings me a lot of purpose and passion.
Your work focuses a lot on patterns like behavioral, emotional, relational. When did you start noticing those patterns and how powerful they really were?
Yeah, so I have the privilege of working directly with people. So I facilitate groups throughout the week, and I also have private practice. And I see clients individually at treatment centers. And I like noticing patterns because it's not, I don't like to label it in a judgment. I see our patterns as more protective than defective. And if we can
Mm.
identify a pattern, which is likely formed when we're enduring something or surviving something. So, in other words, it's an adaptation, it's a survival mechanism, it's something that perhaps even helped us. Hot take. Dare I say, glad you had it maybe at a certain time, depending on the circumstances. And I think when we get to that pattern and what it was, how it was protecting us, we can try to redirect it or replace it even with something that's more sustainable. So I think it comes out of that, like focusing on that, the messiness of addiction and seeing it more as a protective measure that can be treated, that's treatable.
I always think that my addiction, in a way, like kept me alive. Like I was like
Yeah.
self medicating, like really severe depression and
Mhm.
anxiety. And it was the only tool I had. And I don't know where I would be without it. I don't know if I would have made it through those, 20 years or so.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I've heard
without it, it was,
I believe you. And I've heard this before. I've heard
yeah,
people share, various experiences that the only thing I could say in the moment was, "Thank goodness you had it. Thank goodness you had it then." I mean, it's not working anymore and it's starting to take more than it's giving,
yes,
but
that's exactly what it is. It became the problem itself. But for the
Mhm.
time that it worked, it, was, like, the only kind of moments of the day that I had a break from what was going on in my head.
Yeah.
And I know it's probably maybe not the most popular thing to say about drugs and alcohol, but it worked for what it worked for. But how much do you think people blame themselves for those patterns? And in your work, you've said they're not personal, and what do you mean by that?
So, you know, we blame ourselves. It's really tangible. Like I said before, it's kind of messy. It's like it's it drags other people into it. So society for a while, I think we've gotten better, blamed the person. I mean, look at how we used to just kind of like, so and so is um, fill in the blank. And it's really hard on families. It's really hard. So I think if we're absorbing the shame around it,
Yeah.
most people would blame themselves. Now, unfortunately, shame is not motivating. I mean, guilt can
Yeah.
be, but shame is kind of malignant and it's paralyzing.
What
Um,
about fear?
Fear, I think, is at the base of a lot of things that could raise a brow into why someone does what they do.
Yeah.
So if we view it though from this lens that has compassion and function and I like to call it pattern solving more than problem solving, I think it speaks to what's really going on with someone in a way that can motivate positive change rather than make us want to escape further. Like to your point and what we were just talking about, I had this young man who was from an Indian culture, like Indian family, religious, and and he was transitioning from female to male and just really trying to match his insides to his outsides. And it was
Yeah.
during that time where he said, if I didn't have alcohol, like I'm, he was thinking about ending his life. And this
Yes.
is what I'm talking about. This is why it's like, okay, I'm, thank God.
Yes. Yes. I feel that exactly. And I have Indian parents too. And so yeah, I do understand that. It's like if you and I think there are some cultures, I don't know if you noticed this, that we're not really taught coping mechanisms. The coping mechanism is just
100%.
to push through, right? Like it's just like I walked to school for 3 miles without shoes and you're complaining about what? You need a coping mechanism? Like you need to
You
see a
don't get to
therapist?
complain. 100%. Our programming has so much to do with how safe emotions feel.
I I, like, had some back issues, like, the last couple of months, and my therapist said, like, "Maybe you should, treat, doing things for your back as, like, self-care." So, like, taking, like, a bath with Epsom salts
Right.
and, and so you can actually, like, now think of that as something you have to do instead of, something you get to do, and I started crying.
Mm,
Like, and I was like, "I don't know why I'm crying, but that's just" and it is
mhm.
because you're not really taught, like, that self-care is something that it's just not acceptable, but it's, like, silly, right? It's a
'Cause we
waste of
don't have
time.
permission. It's like there's and we don't give ourselves permission to feel it. So we're like constantly fighting, we're like severing the head from the heart. And alcohol is a wonderful elixir to kind of keep that disconnect and allow us to, go on with our day, so to speak.
So do you see addiction primarily as a disease, a coping strategy? Like, in your work,
You
what have you come
know,
to?
you know, uh, I don't know. Can I say that? I know people don't like when professionals
Yeah,
say, "I don't know," but, like, why? Like,
I
it's
don't
not a
know.
hill I'm gonna die on if it's a disease or not. I mean,
Yeah,
sure, I
yeah,
think some of us are more prone to it. I think trauma complicates everything. I think as we're talking about cultures, I mean, you'll see the prevalence within certain cultures. I think once we kinda cross that Rubicon and the well is that deep, I maybe there is a point of no return. Perhaps that's the disease model, where
yeah.
so I don't know. I don't know. I
I
don't
get
go into it thinking someone's sick. So maybe that's where I like,
Yeah,
don't love what that means or what it could imply. Like I don't know if people will get sober, but I believe they can.
yeah, you believe that everyone can.
I believe you can.
Yeah. And so why do addiction and, for example, let's talk about a different, like, disease model, but,
Yeah.
like, mood disorders
Yeah.
often go hand in hand.
Sure. Yeah. Well, let's just kind of what we were just saying. Maybe to say that I'm sad or I have negative thoughts or I'm really uncomfortable in social situations is not the kind of vulnerability people were given permission to have. So instead of coming with curiosity, which is like a true love language to the self, we judge ourselves. We don't feel that way. Don't be that way. Don't do this. And I think if we do that to a point, we're going to need something to numb that out.
Yeah. Yeah, and what are some early warning signs that someone's using substances to regulate their emotions?
If it's by oneself, if it's kind of a reflex
Mm.
reaction to, I had a hard day, so I'm gonna have a drink. Like that kind of like if a woman shared with me this week and I really enjoyed the way she described it. She's like, it started as magical it became medicinal, and then it was just miserable.
Oh,
And it's like you
yeah.
can feel that across the lifespan, and I almost wonder if we can even, like, associate age with that. Like, maybe in your 20s, it's like the cup of independence and freedom and fun, and then this is generally speaking, and then in our 30s, we can end up having, like, more career pressures or family pressures or financials, and we're,
Mm-hmm.
like, adulting in a way that's just, like, overwhelming and trying to do it all and be everywhere at the same time. So then maybe it's like, I gotta take a load off.
Yeah.
And then if we continue kind of using it more coping, it's the
Yeah.
is it to disconnect or to connect? Is kind of a maybe a reduced litmus test if it's coping or not? Is it like a ritual with others shared, or is it a private party of one?
Have you seen healthy alcohol use? Do you see healthy alcohol and even maybe recreational drug use?
Healthy. I don't know if I'd use that word. I've
Yeah.
seen, I don't there is no good amount of alcohol for our body's sake.
Mhm.
We know so much more. Um, I think like that COVID boom
Yeah.
was really eye-opening for research and for information and for like not only when we disconnect people from our structure and our gyms and our this that it really soared. It was almost like deemed like essential. And then I'm still seeing people who are like coming out of like, oh, I was a normal drinker and then COVID. I still see it 5 or 6 years later. Um, but let me get back to your question. I mean, I would probably frame it more like problematic versus non-problematic
Okay.
than healthy versus non-healthy. Sure,
Yeah.
like even
Okay.
drug use, sure. Could an experience with friends on a psychedelic be a means to some insight or some form of connection that then, as long as it's not continued, could that be non-problematic? Yeah, sure.
Yeah. Do you use psychedelics in your practice?
I don't because I work primarily with addiction. So I'm really trying.
Yes.
So like if I can frame it simply as like outsourcing self-regulation, I'm really interested in empowering someone to be able to self-regulate without reaching. So for
Yes.
my work, I do not. I'm not anti, but I just again tend to see people who tend to, have a darker attachment with substances.
Yes. And so I interview a lot of people, right, who are proponents of psychedelics, even in the treatment of addiction. And, I can't help but like relate it to myself. And I am someone who will just go to a substance. And
Mhm.
so it freaks me out,
Yeah.
right? So I
Mhm.
think I'm somebody that if we started microdosing ketamine and I would be like, let's do that more.
Yeah, it's like,
Like, let's do
"Oh,
it
I
more.
actually don't micro anything.
Yeah. I've never microed. Like, let's macro that and
Let's
let's do it
macro
5
the
times
shit
a
out of
week.
that." Right, yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly, exactly. So, risky for this.
Do you look at that as distinctly different than the use of, for example, antidepressants like selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors? So is that different using ketamine versus using like Lexapro?
I think so.
Different to
Just
you?
speaking to, like, an alternate state of consciousness. Yeah.
Yeah. So even though we had somebody on who prescribes ketamine treatment a lot, and so they say, oh well, the dose that they prescribe is the equivalent to like 1.5 glasses of wine in terms of like impairment.
Mm,
That to me is pretty significant for
mhm,
me.
mhm,
But I don't feel impaired on Lexapro.
mm-mm.
So is
Yeah.
that sort of
Yeah, I don't even know how they would measure that kinda thing. Seems a little
don't
arbitrary.
either. Like the fuck upness? Like how fucked up are you? I'm like one
Right.
and a half glasses fucked up. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I don't know if, like, driving on Lexapro is a thing.
It's But that is interesting. I'm actually really glad you said it because it's something that's been, like, sitting with me that, like, why do I have this hang up about psychedelics, like, for myself? And it's, because I know it's the same thing with weed. It's like, yeah, it wasn't my drug of choice,
Mhm.
but I just know me, and I just know that I will want to do it more often, but people keep saying, no, 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 you're not looking at the psychedelics the same way. You're looking at it from a different lens.
You're
So
looking at it from your lens with a ton of
yeah.
honesty. So I commend you. I mean, that's just such self-awareness of like, that's not me. I mean, and you can almost hear like, let's use the analogy with like former cigarette smokers. Like I know a former
Oh,
smoker who's just like, oh, I can't have that cigar because I will be
no
right
way.
back into smoking, where some people can have that cigar and put it down. So it's like it's sheds the light on this not being a one size fits all model, which is like so real. And why, if we can really get to know someone and their personal patterns, what works and what doesn't work for them, I think it can be shame reducing. We're not comparing. Yeah, some people can, some people can't. And when we can like humble ourselves to that notion of I'm actually not going to risk this because my health, my relationships, my wealth, everything, my career's better sober. Well, then those stakes are high.
We talk about that one size fits all model, then how do you feel? Because that's a criticism often of AA. Do you think it is a one size fits all model?
No, I mean, is religion a one interpretation? You know what I mean? Not to make it about that, but I would say I love what AA does for people. The fact that it's free, the fellowship.
Yeah.
Like, I've never heard of anyone like, it's not like someone's at the door with a checklist and it's like, you must agree to these terms before you can enter. It's not that strict. Um, I heard a great quote the other day that it's like, a lot of people have a lot of different ideas of what God is and they're all right. It's like, it doesn't have to be one thing. So I think you can interpret it and integrate it. And again, community, huge. I think that's like universal. That's one thing I could
Yeah.
maybe get behind of us all needing.
Yeah. It's
So,
community.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. I
Yeah.
think we need it. I think we're interconnected whether we like it or not.
Yeah. And when you were describing the alcohol use, or drug use in your, like, 20s, 30s, 40s, you're sort of, to me, describing me, which is, like,
Mm,
a high functioning sort
mhm,
of individual, and so people usually think actually addiction sort of looks the other way, the very, like, low bottom,
mm.
um, way, and so how do you find or do you find a difference between how addiction shows up in, like, high functioning people?
I do. I think high functioning people are also a lot less likely to ask for help. So now, like, if we're trying to understand the person, the individual who tends to do it all, maybe a little perfectionism, I mean, that can become pressure. Not to mention, we're rewarded for a lot of the things, being stoic and being high achieving and being all of these things. So the outside could look very put together, um,
Yeah.
which is kind of part of the pressure cooker.
Yeah, it is. I think for me, a big part was I was a dentist, and so I had a dental license,
Mhm.
and every 2 years, you fill out the renewal for your dental license, and the question is, like, very specific about if you've struggled with, substances, like, do you have a substance abuse issue?
Mhm.
Have you abused alcohol or drugs? And it's like, I think that as a professional, sometimes with a license, like, you're really afraid to admit it, and then you
Yeah.
kinda hang on, right? Like, I was kinda hung up on that. I was like, "Well, just gonna do this until it wears out." Like, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
there's no option to get help or there's no
Mhm.
yeah. And so do you find that you have people that are really resistant?
Well, there's such confidentiality and HIPAA is upheld that, like, I understand that fear. Like, I completely understand that fear. And
Yeah.
I'm not sure that people actually have repercussions. I mean, if you think about it, we could take a
Yeah, yeah,
medical leave and it really is it's
yeah.
deemed medical and that's like, no one's business in a way. So I think, and
I
even,
think I just used it.
yeah,
I
of
used it as
course.
an excuse for a long time.
Sure. And I get that. I'm curious a little more about you. I'm sure your listeners know your story, but if you could like how long you've been sober and just kind of maybe your
Yeah, I've been sober 9 years in a couple of weeks.
nice.
And so I was practicing at like super high level. I had like 8 offices
Wow.
as an orthodontist, employed, almost 50 people,
Wow.
and the whole time was like a high functioning alcoholic,
Mhm.
and like occasional drug user. And then I just got super lucky and got an opportunity to sell my business.
Well.
And I knew, like, all of a sudden, like, all the excuses were gone, right?
Mhm.
So it's like resources were not an issue, time wasn't an issue,
Mhm.
which time was always the one. The reputation wasn't an
Mhm.
issue. And I just sort of knew I had to make some sort of huge change because um, I wasn't really proud of anything else in my life. I hadn't
Mm.
achieved anything else. I didn't have like hobbies. My
Uh,
health wasn't amazing. It wasn't bad,
mhm.
but it was um yeah, and so I knew that with that time that if I didn't get sober and I had this, if I wasn't working like 14, 16 hours a day, that I would
Uh,
just start drinking earlier and
mhm.
earlier, or doing drugs. And so yeah, I feel like I got so lucky.
Well, well, you made that choice. I don't know if that's luck. I mean, maybe the sale part, but, like, I wanna give you credit for that because I've even seen people who with the sale, which is kind of like the pinnacle, like, I made it. The lack of
It's
structure
pinnacle.
and then the grief around can really, I mean, I'm so glad that you saw that because that totally
Yes.
happens where it gets real, severe at that point.
So that happened to my husband at the time. We had been together almost 20 years. And so we
Mhm.
were always like, he was an orthodontist too. And so that's what happened to him. It was like the
Mhm.
grief, the lack of structure. And so we ended up like splitting up like 5 years after the sale.
Mhm.
He just could not like find his footing after.
Mhm.
And so, um, yeah, it is interesting how the same event affects different people
Mhm.
differently. I think yeah, that is interest I didn't yeah. I always look at it like, if I hadn't gotten sober when I did, I would be dead, right?
Wow.
Also, I needed a purpose, right? And
Yes.
so I don't think I would have found another purpose without quitting, and so I think that's what he struggled with. He definitely
Yeah.
didn't.
Yeah. Wow, that's powerful.
Yeah, it brings me to sort of the next question, which is
Yeah.
identity change, which is
Yeah.
something I struggled with so much
Mhm.
after the sale. I went to school till I was like you, probably till I was like
Oof.
30 to
Yep.
become an
Sure.
orthodontist. And then I built like the most successful practice I could in the next like decade or so of my life.
Amazing.
And then I had no other identity.
Mhm.
And then especially with with the divorce, like, so at least I've been like a wife, an orthodontist, a business
Mhm.
owner. And then within a few years, it was all kind of stripped away. How do you see um, identity change happen, especially
Yeah.
in people when they're getting sober? And what part of sobriety is like an identity change?
I think a big part of it, some people identify as the fun one, the life of the party. So, it is who am I if I am not that is a big one. I feel like we go through in our lifespan, I feel like this happens at some point, right? Becoming
Yeah.
parents, when friend groups change, there's a lot of things that shift over time. But specifically to addiction, that's a big one that I see is how it almost I think the fear is if I don't continue to drink, I will be isolated, bored, alone. Even though usually by the time people come into treatment, that party's been over. Actually, it's been isolation and alone. So it's really interesting to, like, see that discrepancy and note that. It's like, okay, I hear what you're saying, and what has it actually looked like over these last however long? And I had a young woman a few weeks ago say and she was really battling with this. She's like, "I just can't imagine not having a glass of champagne at my wedding." And I was like, "Yeah," And then she said, "But if I choose champagne, there will be no wedding." And it's like, yeah, that's the whole picture. Um,
Picture.
that's the whole picture. Or even like, oh, um, drinking actually helps me close deals. Drinking makes me better at my job because fill in the blank, I have a little social anxiety or I have this or that. And there's like the liquid courage and we hear it makes me a better closer. And then it's like, well, but I actually lost my job due to my drinking. So,
Yeah.
we can hang on to it's almost like a bad relationship. It's like a really bad boyfriend.
Yeah.
You could look back and just think of those little glimmers, but the whole picture isn't always painted. And once we can connect the totality of it, the entirety of it, um, it's usually a different story. So I know I kind of rambled there. Back to
Um,
identity. It's
no,
definitely
no.
part of it, and there's grief, there's a sadness.
Yeah. But you're right about the party being over. I actually said to somebody last night, I'm meeting some new people tonight, and I couldn't have even imagined doing that sober. And then I said, but you know what? I by the end, the last few years, I couldn't drink the way I wanted to when I was out.
Mm,
So the only time I could really drink the way I wanted to when I was at home by myself.
yeah.
And so it actually became even yeah, you're right. It becomes even more isolating. We were like, all right, let's get this dinner done because I'm only reasonably allowed. I'm like, well, maybe I could stretch it to 3 glasses of wine.
Mhm.
Beyond that, I look a little like I
Mhm.
might have a problem. And so I was always kind of like looking at, see like when can I go home and
Mhm.
like really drain?
Right. Right.
And so yeah, the party had been over for a long
Yeah.
time. I know it's funny, my brother is also, in recovery, and he would I remember when he was the last few years, and he was like, "I'm just trying to party over here." And I was like, "With who?
Yeah.
Who are you partying with?"
Yeah. Or even we think it's like I've heard this before too. It's like, so some families are big drinkers, big drinking families, and someone told me it's like, "Oh, I actually realized that I was the one bringing the booze." Like, didn't even realize that, like, he was the supplier, in fact.
I didn't realize until pretty, late in the game that I was the drinker, like, I was the heavy drinker with all of my friends. So like, "What am I gonna do when I get sober?" And it's like, yeah, no one else really drinks that much.
Yeah. And isn't it wild that,
Yeah.
like, once we see it, we can't unsee it?
Like, yeah.
It's like,
You
the things that we thought, the lies that we convinced ourselves of. There's like almost a little delusional aspect to it.
Yeah, there definitely is. And so what do you find in common between people who can achieve long-term sobriety and people who are maybe stuck in that cycle of like short-term sobriety, relapse, short-term, or I don't know if those are the terms you use. I know,
Sure.
re- yeah.
There's definitely a big difference between the internal and external motivation. So if people are doing it
Mhm.
because they think they should, or maybe there's some heat on them, or perhaps given an ultimatum from someone or an employer or a spouse, or so those things that can get us there, but it's still a should. And interestingly, I've found that even health, like, even, like, let's say, the liver enzymes are out of whack. Even
Yep,
health, which seems so personal, is still kind of more of a should.
it definitely is. Yep. I kind of feel that. I feel it where it's like, well, because I feel like also you can come up with excuses
Oh,
for
yeah,
health.
and you
And
don't
it's like,
really feel your liver enzymes being off. Like, it's still a story that some lab doc told you about, so we could still kinda be disconnected from it. So I would say that is more of a struggle. Now I've also seen people enter treatment at kind of more externally driven and then become internally driven in the process, which is a very cool process to take place. Um, but then like that intrinsic, like I really want this, like I want this is really bodes well for someone's prognosis and or long-term sustainable change is that like, you know, I'm over it or even what I've seen, which is pretty, great, is when someone's like, "You know what? I'm gonna give myself a year." And then at the year, it's like, well, I wouldn't risk this. My health, my wealth, my relationships, everything is
Yeah.
just so much better. I feel great. I'm sleeping well. I mean, alcohol throws daggers in our sleep. I'm wearing my Aura ring.
I was just looking at your Oura ring.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I'm
yeah,
like, "Give
yeah.
me a paid partnership Aura ring." Like, I love it. I tap this thing all the time because it's like you can really see how it impacts us,
Yeah.
in ways that we weren't aware of. So
I
yeah,
love
that's a
the
big
metrics.
yeah, the data. I mean, the data is interesting.
Yeah.
It's pretty
It is.
consistent.
It is. I understand when people are like, "Well, we can't have, like, we can't digitize everything, or we can't," and it's like, but there are some advancements we've had like that with the Aura Ring, that when you can
Well,
track your health metrics in a way that I think are actually, like, amazing. I think they're super helpful, and
yeah,
so, yeah, I love it.
for sure.
I love it.
Yeah, me
Yeah.
too.
Speaking of, actually,
Mhm.
great segue, because if we're
Mhm.
talking about, well, you talk a lot about the psychological effects of social media.
Mm.
What concerns you most about it?
Yeah, I have young daughters. I think I just
Oh,
see the how if we don't have boundaries around it, or if we don't understand the filtered nature of things, how it can be just kind of add to our list of unattainable goals or comparison or things that ultimately aren't good, particularly in more vulnerable stages like adolescence and things like that.
how do we protect ourselves, like our mental health, this kind of constantly connected world? Like, what are some of your suggestions?
Well, kind of on a more simple level, as we're talking about metrics, like setting screen time limits is always a good thing. There are certain activities that like phones just don't work. Like if you're in a cycle class, an exercise class,
Yeah.
or if we can consciously not bring our phone to the dinner or have it face down. Um, Reminding ourselves of the importance, I think, of being in person and connecting with people. Um, will help. Also, like, I think we can get in a place where it's our everything, it's our alarm clock, it's our music, it's our this, it's our that. We can like get an alarm clock so we don't feel like we have to have it next to us if that's the thing. That's
Yeah.
keeping it at our bedside is like, well, I have to wake up in the morning. It's like, okay, there's like you can get like $7 and perfectly
An alarm
fine
clock.
alarm clock. So that's kind
Yeah.
of on like the I would say those are like strategies that are just kind of measurable, but on an emotional level, maybe a more spiritual one is understanding the realness or I don't want to say lack thereof. I don't want to take it away. I think social media has also brought a lot of information to people. When I was in early
Mm,
motherhood, I remember being so grateful that I could learn and share and talk and and connect with people in a time in my life that was actually pretty isolated. And in a way, I was indoors probably the most I had ever been in my life. So it's not all bad. Um,
yeah.
but I think also, we have this confirmation bias. If we're feeling unwell, if we're feeling like we are not aligned with where we want to be or in whatever which way, those are the times that we don't want to be comparing ourselves to snapshots of other people's lives and creating stories around it that are likely not the whole picture.
Have you seen ways in that social media can amplify anxiety and mood dysregulation?
Yeah, yes, I have. I've seen it when, let's say, someone really wants to start a family, and all of a sudden their feed is everyone who's doing that, and that's like you really feel like you're missing the boat. I've seen it with, careers, people it's hard out there coming out of college. It's a strange times, and if we don't have a specific trade and licensed, professional, it can seem very discouraging. And if you look around and it's like, "Oh, this one's working here and, and affording this and doing that," it can really put us in a place where we feel like, we're not performing well, and then we can get in some dark spaces.
Yeah, that does make sense. And so, what are some emotional skills that we need to build then to replace sort of the more addictive coping mechanisms like social media, which is an easy one, I feel like, to fall into,
It
and
is.
we don't think of it as like a co-addiction, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, it is. And I wanna hold some grace towards, like, not everyone is extroverted, right? So it might be and I tend to be more
Not.
extroverted, so I don't wanna make it so easy to be like, "Okay, well, let's go out and make sure we're in a meetup group or doing things like that." I mean, that could be literally like, let's jump off of a mountain to some people and their nervous systems. So I'm not gonna, you know, um, but if you can have some individual therapy, I think that's a great way to uncover what could actually be effective for an individual. And insurance companies are paying more and more. There's a lot of affordable treatment out there. So, and like also what a effort of self-love, I think, to say, like, I'm gonna carve out some time. And if it is resources, it's like, you know, maybe there's some changes we could make. Like maybe that $7 Starbucks run every day, if we put it all together and like switch to another form of caffeine can actually afford me. So I would start there. I would start to say that like not everything works for everyone. And even a
Yeah,
therapist is probably going to be the first to normalize how hard shit is.
yeah.
So we don't feel so alone or as though we're defective and everyone else has got it all figured out because that's just not accurate.
Yeah. Do you find people who have struggled with addiction have a tendency, even when they're sober, to avoid their emotions?
Sure. Yeah. It's like
Yeah.
I see it. It's like, not to create generalizations, but let's just do it for sake. I do feel like um alcohol tends to be the avoidant type. And then I almost feel like opioids tend to be with people who feel their feelings so intensely
Yeah.
that they need to numb that pain, right? So it kind of like maybe they're like two extremes. It's like the totally avoid it and then the like sitting so closely to all of the feeling that it's overwhelming.
And what is the difference when either type of those get sober? What do they struggle with then differently?
Learning how to do the other thing.
Yeah.
Like AA is big with contrary reaction, right? And I always feel like, again, not to be reductionist and say there's two types of people, but kind of. Let's just for argument's sake,
Yeah.
in the treatment center, there's like, you know, the some people I want to be like, let us take care of you. And this is the over functioning, takes care of everyone, does everything, like let us do some of this so you really like you have permission to be messy. Like you have permission to just be in your feels and experience them. And then there's on the other side the people I'm like, you like make your bed, like go to the gym. Like I feel like some structure and containment around all of this would actually be a super healthy um, change up for you. And let's try that one on for size. So again,
Yeah.
it's almost like with gambling. Like we have like our like slot machine players and then we have our craps players. There's different personalities.
Yes, there are totally different personalities to addicts. I guess it's not like, the most. What word do you use? Do you call us addicts?
Uh, I don't love it. I don't.
What is your
I don't
like
even
new
like
what is the word you
even when
use?
I hear people say junkie, I get like, oof. I don't
Oh,
like
no,
it.
not
I
junkie.
know that people
I
throw
also
that
don't
word
like
around
getting
all the
clean.
time.
Oh, no, I don't like
I
junkie,
don't like it at
please.
all. Well, you'll see, like, I've kind of shied away and I do from labels. I think they look, certain diagnoses are important for like fostering a treatment plan and an understanding and identifying tools that work. Yes. But for things like this, I don't, someone going through some shit. I mean, is that okay to say? Because
That's a
that's
good one.
truly how I feel, you know? Um, because I don't think it's a sentence or
Yeah.
but
No, I
then
get it. I just
well, let me ask you
yeah.
that because I think maybe identifying with something that intense or extreme or firm, whatever you want to say, is probably the very reason why you could be like, you know what? I can't dabble in ketamine or I can't do this psychedelic assisted treatment because that's not me. And maybe that identification is what actually saves people from.
Identifying as sober
Okay,
saves
good,
me from those things. So the
good.
ketamine, like the ketamine Cali sober conversation, my identity as like being sober.
Okay, I
Um,
like that.
versus I would say even versus alcohol free, right? And so alcohol free sober to me, it's like indicates there was an issue.
Mm,
Like alcohol free is like, oh, it's a lifestyle choice.
yeah,
Which mine
fair.
I mean, you could call it a lifestyle. It was like a choice to lifestyle choice to live, but like, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I think so. But it also depends who I'm around, right? So if I meet somebody very casually, I'll say, "Oh, I don't drink."
Mm-hmm.
But if it's someone I know, they'll know that I'm sober. But addict, I'm like very easy with labels. Like I'm like, you can call me whatever.
Mm-hmm.
You can call me an alcoholic, you can call me an addict, you can call me someone who's, I'm kind of easy with it, but I do understand how especially people who are in that gray area
Mm-hmm.
don't want to label themselves. Does that make I don't know. How do you feel about do you work with people that are sort of in more of a gray area than like life or death with their
Sometimes.
addiction? Mhm.
Sometimes. Yeah, I've seen it all.
Yeah.
I also
Yeah. And
don't
are they
like in working with people, I don't like to feel like separate from. I think like the
yeah.
the joining in this like understanding and meeting someone when they're where they're at and coming from this place of like, I don't think anyone's really immune. It depends. Just
Yeah. Yep.
feels
I agree.
better.
Circumstantial.
Mhm.
Yeah. Well, circumstantial.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. So, as we sort of wrap up and someone's listening and they're
Mhm.
feeling stuck
Mhm.
in pattern, what is a small first step they can take today?
Today, I would say set a very short-term attainable goal. Just a little something where you can try. And maybe that
Yeah.
could help someone if they're wondering, am I that bad? Do I need help? Maybe that could be a good way to assess it. Let's say if it's alcohol, let's say, I'm not going to drink Monday through Thursday. Let's just
Yeah.
start there. And then see how you feel. Maybe you can push it back even further. If the obsession is there, yeah, it's just something to look at and something to be honest about. So perhaps start there. Like, and if you do something that you said you were going to do and that you really want to do, give yourself a pat on the back. Like, let's not approach this in this perfectionistic way. Um, and if you're struggling, y there is so much for you out there.
Yeah.
There's a lot to read. There are treatment centers, of course. Again, not assuming that's accessible to everyone. But there's even a lot of free resources out there. You can go to an AA meeting. You can just put dip your toe in. You don't have to it doesn't have to be this thing that you tell everyone about. You can just even join a Zoom meeting if you want. And
Oh,
feel
totally.
it out.
Yeah, totally join a Zoom meeting. You
Yeah.
don't have to even go on camera the first time. Just check it out. See
That's
if it's for you.
right.
I agree.
That's right. Yeah, and you might be surprised by, how many people, are going through, have gone through, love people, have loved ones who've gone through, are going through.
I love that. Thank you so much. This is such a great
Oh,
conversation. I know
thank
our listeners are
you.
going to get so much.
Well, so good
Thank
to
you so much
meet
for being
you.
here.
And thank you.
You
Thanks for
too. And
doing what you do and sharing your story
oh,
and bringing
you
this to
too.
people. It's really important work.
Thank you. And thank you all for listening to Sisters in Sobriety. And we will see you next week.